Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have a guest. Let me tell you, things happen in interesting ways, right? Last night, I completed the book, the new book that I'm writing, and I am so happy about it. But today I come into the office and I said, well, let's see what I'm going to discuss. The book, by the way, is called How to Converse with Your Right-Wing Family and Friends and You Know What. But anyhow, interestingly, I get an email from a publicist this morning, and the email said, hey, there's this guy. His name is Ed Wynn, former executive of several major corporations, wrote a book, wants us all to be in sync in the way we think, in sync in the way we communicate with each other. And he just wrote a book. And I took a look at the thing and I said, wow, there's a symbiotic relationship between what we're seeing here. So just maybe I can hustle real hard, and in the next 2 or 3 hours, let's go ahead and see if we can get this guy out here. And you know what? I went ahead and I contacted the publicist and said, hey, I want to talk to him, but I want to talk to him not tomorrow, not the other day, now. And the guy said, really, that quick? Yeah, it's not live. It's almost live, AVQ, almost live. So then I went ahead and I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take care of it. I think if I have an extra hour, I would get a chance to process it, all that good stuff, and bring it to you guys today. Which, you know, I tell you what, I think it was just fine. Anyhow, we're going to get into that rather quickly. Great. I'd love to hear that, buddy. Love to hear that. Anyhow, folks, check this out. What are we going to talk about today? Let me go ahead and cue one more thing up here real quick. Let me cue it up real quick. I'll tell you the name in a minute, my brother. I'll tell you the name in a minute. Para ver. Here we go. You know I got to go to para ver every now and I'm queuing all these things up. Okay. Title of the show today, Ed Wynn Talks We the People. That's the name of his book. And Sensible Solutions. Trump admin thinks you're paid too much and more. Ed Wynn uses his new book, We the People, to discuss communication skills and sensible solutions. Trump secretary thinks you make too much money, folks. You know that $600 that we're giving you? Oh, that's just too much damn money for you. So we're just going to haggle. First, we're going to hoodwink our people to tell them, in as much as you folks in Appalachia love me, you can keep your poor butt there and just continue to worship me because you know who I love. And Bruce, as usual, says, remember, vote early. He doesn't mean to vote often. He just means vote early. Vote early. Let our votes all count. Bruce, every day you come on this show, you remember, please, to put that word vote in there to make sure that I say something about vote. Remember, this is y'all's show. You make sure that I say something about voting, brother. You make sure I say something about voting. Former executive and author Ed Wynn wants to do his part to move our national dialogue forward. Ed Wynn made it clear that solutions are not all that difficult at all if one is logical. The problem is that logic is not in the best interest of some. Trump's secretary, again, doesn't want to pay you. Trump's secretary doesn't want to solve the problem that they themselves created. You know, a lot of people are out there, including some conservatives that are working right now. They are feeling, wait a minute, Why should you be able to sit on your butt and make $600 while that person is going out to work and not being able to collect the $600? Guess what, conservative? I'm in agreement with you. That person that was lucky enough to maintain their jobs, they shouldn't just be getting their pay. That $600 that's going to everybody, which is equivalent to a 40-hour week at $15 an hour, which is what we say is the minimum survival rate. That worker that's out there keeping us free, keeping us fed, keep every American citizen. This is a time for us to really revamp the economic system. I don't want to get into a detailed economic system right now, but right now what we should be doing is, yes, everybody that has to stay home, $600. And those people that are putting their lives on the line, their pay that they're getting paid, plus that $600 that everybody else is getting. And we should not envy that. That people say, oh, people not returning to work. We're slowing down work. You want to increase work? Make sure that the folks who are going to go back to work also get that $600. People say, where is that money coming from? We are creating it out of thin air. Oh, but isn't that going to create that is going to make the money supply extend too far? It's going to kill the system? No. I'm not going to go into economic policy today, folks. But let me tell you, if Trump really wanted to see the economy take off and the possibility of re-election, you go ahead and not say $600 for the unemployed. You say $600 for every American right now. Right now. And you'd see, the people will know, and wait, you mean I still get that $600 if I go back to work too? Wow, suddenly the catastrophe that the middle class has been suffering for decades would start to slowly, not big time, slowly be mitigated. And you say, how do we pay for this? First of all, we don't have to immediately pay for it. We borrow for it. And then how do we pay for it? The surcharge on wealth, the surcharge and all these things. Because remember, all the wealth that's been accumulated over the years, all that transition in money from the poor, from the middle class to the wealthy has always been your money. It has always been your excess labor. It has always been what they decided not to pay you. Jeff Bezos's money is the money that he discounted from you. In other words, when he said, I'm not gonna pay you but $15 an hour, but in that big delivery services that I have, and in maximizing the money that I'm making from all the people that sells through Amazon, in taking my cut out of everything, I can keep most of the money. So what we say is, no problem, we're not going to disrupt your method. We're just going to tax the holy hell out of wealth back into the system, because the economy does not belong to Jeff Bezos. He doesn't have superior intellect that is better than anybody else. And all the work being done is being done by us. All the intellect to create his computer systems, to create his clouds, it's us. We did it. The engineers, the lawyers, the doctors, everybody else did it. So I don't know how Aquarian Radio, I don't know how we would implement that, but we'll talk about that when I get into that position. Anyhow, I want to get started with some videos before I get to the thing. So let's get busy. Anyhow, folks, starting off. Pelosi, you know when progressives are going to start making a move. The mainstream media starts to try to slow it down a bit, and people don't immediately see it until it's too late. Well, the mainstream media is seeing a possibility of a landslide. Landslide on the left. A landslide on the left means, yes, we're going to get a lot of the Democratic moderates in, but a lot of progressives who decided to fight in the right lane, which a lot of times it makes no sense because you're always going to lose. But now those folks stand a possibility of winning, which means progressives are going to be able to get a good shot of a lot of policies going forward. So you always see the mainstream media try to cap that. I want you to listen to how Martha Raddatz interviewed Pelosi yesterday about COVID, trying to put some blame on COVID, not only where it belongs on the right side of the equation, but also on the left side of the equation. Check this out. Martha Raddatz threw a curveball on Nancy Pelosi today, but you know Nancy, she did just what she had to do. She set the record straight for something a journalist should know. journalists should at least know basic math. Check this out.
Speaker Pelosi, one of the things you talk about is getting rid of COVID. Your home state, California, is the first state to surpass 500,000 positive cases, a record high number. What did your fellow Democrat, Governor Gavin Newsom, do wrong, and what should he do in the future?
I don't think he did anything wrong. We are the largest state in the union, so numerically it isn't shocking to say we have the most cases. But we're very proud of our governor, Governor Newsom. He contained and controlled how this spread in the beginning. Some people in the state wanted to open up, and we're a large state. We have great diversity of opinion on what should happen in different regions. And when the opening up took place, we have more cases, and that should be instructive to others. The virus is vicious, and you have to have shelter in place as long as you need it. And when you do, and you reduce the spread, then you can open up the schools when you reduce the rate of infection in a community. But until you do that, you have to be very careful.
Foolish question asked, sensible answer given. Nancy Pelosi should not have had to waste time on something that journalists could have stated, which is fact. That is, with California having by far the largest population in the country, and still at a rate, having a slower rate of increase of this particular pandemic, it should not even have been asked. I'm Egberto Willies, host of... No, it should not even have been asked. It should not have been asked in the least. But again, that is the kind of journalism you get when one side starts to see, oh, landslide coming on the left. So therefore, we start to have to put them down a notch. Now, remember earlier I spoke to you about, before I get any further, hydroxychloroquine. Finally, all the president's men are on board to go ahead and say the president is full of crap. And yesterday, I want to show you what occurred, and I think this should close the book on the issue altogether, because when you get El Señor Brett Gerard saying, no, hydroxychloroquine is not going to do the job, then it's all over. So my friends who are on the right, my friends who are right-wing people who are following these crazy doctors and these crazy conspiracy theories, etc., please, even from the White House, the people working for Dr. Trump, they are now telling you, and the reason they're telling you is they're getting scared. They're getting scared that people are killing themselves on the right with following all the wrong things. So here's the end. The sensible people on the president's COVID-19 task force has all come out and said hydroxychloroquine does not work. Now it's Admiral Brett Gerard who said it. Let's take a look at what's going on with respect to this hydroxychloroquine now, and then we'll take it on the other side.
In Florida, which marked its fourth straight day of record deaths on Friday, the president simply ignored the facts.
I think we're doing really a fantastic job.
Earlier this week, he retweeted this video featuring doctors insisting masks don't work, but hydroxychloroquine does.
You don't need mask. There is a cure.
Doctors, there was a woman who was spectacular in her statements about it.
Hydroxychloroquine is not effective in the treatment of coronavirus disease or COVID-19.
I know you're not a political person, but the president continues to advocate for hydroxychloroquine. Is that a danger to public health?
At this point in time, there's been 5 randomized placebo-controlled trials that do not show any benefit to hydroxychloroquine. So at this point in time, we don't recommend that as a treatment. There's no evidence to show that it is. We have many things that do work. Right now, hydroxychloroquine, I can't recommend that.
Now, for those who are continuing to push this, you're doing a disservice to your society, you're doing a disservice to your community, and you're getting people hurt who actually believe that somehow this thing will work for them, so they can forget about wearing their mask, so they can forget about doing all that is really necessary to keep not only themselves safe, but the entire darn community safe. Folks, let's start listening to the science as opposed to a president who is nothing but a categorical fraud. A categorical fraud, and I do not mince my words as I say that. Now, lastly, I just want you to get the interchange between El Señor Mnuchin and what's her name, Raddatz, because he really showed what he thinks about the American middle class. Check this out, and we'll take it on the other side. Did you know that you are overpaid? If somehow you're getting $600 from the government during this pandemic that really was exacerbated by Donald Trump and his people, you are getting too much money, even though they screwed up the economy. Check this out, and then let's take it on the other side.
On the concept, we absolutely agree on enhanced unemployment. We want to fix the issue where in some cases people are overpaid, and we want to make sure there's the right incentives. But again, let me just emphasize, we put on the table a proposal. Let's extend it for 1 week at the same rate while we negotiate so we don't hurt the American public.
So you do think it is a disincentive to find a job if you have that extra $600?
There's no question in certain cases where we're paying people more to work, stay home than to work, that's created issues in the entire economy. But let me just say, you have to look at all these things.
I want to interrupt you there for just 1 second. It's not all the evidence. A Yale study from this month refutes that, saying many economists who have studied the benefits said that so far they don't see any evidence in labor market data that the payments are affecting the rate at which people are returning to work during the pandemic.
Well, let me just say I went to Yale. I agree on certain things. I don't always agree. There's a Chicago study that goes through all the people that are overpaid.
Secretary Mnuchin should be ashamed of what he just said. If he is stating that this unemployment of $600, which is equivalent to an hourly rate of $15 an hour, and maybe some extra money from the state because of their meager unemployment, is somehow overpaying people, what he should really be saying is, why the hell aren't companies paying a living wage? And what about those stockbrokers who do absolutely nothing but push a little bit of paper and make millions, in fact, some of them, billions of dollars for doing nothing, for creating nothing, for being intellectual in presenting and inventing nothing? They are the ones that are overpaid in this economy. What about the executives that send their folks to work, lay them off when things don't go right for problems that generally they create? They still get golden parachutes. They still get millions, some of them billions. They are the ones that are overpaid. The average American citizen who goes out there to work every single day, who put their limb at risk, who put their health at risk, who put their kids at risk, those are the ones that are not overpaid and deserve much more than even the private sector is paying them, because we do not have an economy that is a fair economy that pays people commensurate with their value to society. And this pandemic has shown that. This pandemic has shown that the people we least pay are some of those that we are most dependent on. While everybody else can stay home, they go to work, and they're the ones that are mostly getting sick. They're the ones that are mostly dying. They don't need just the pay they're getting. They actually need what's also known as hazard pay. If getting that money from the government makes them feel like they're getting more money, hell yes, stay at home until the private enterprises decides to pay you what you're worth, instead of paying you a meager salary where you are left dependent on social services from your government via food stamps and all these other programs. So let's remember this. When they talk about overpaying people staying home, these people still cost the government, because what it turns out to be is a gift to corporations by saying you can hire them at diminished cost, and whatever they need for sustenance later on, they can come for the government later and get it. Look, folks, this is a system that is hurting us all, and that they are even playing with this during the pandemic. Yes, it's going to take us into a depression, but worse, where is the humanity? Finally, Americans got a tiny little break, and even that they can't deal with. They don't want employees, folks. They want slaves. Okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and get with Mr. Ed Wynn, and we'll take it on the other side. Welcome to one more segment of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. We are here today with Ed Wynn. For more than 3 decades, H. Edward Wynn has helped governments and companies discover and implement solutions to complex, often divisive issues. He worked in all branches and levels of government, and with both with Republicans and Democrats. A Truman Presidential Scholar. Ed has a political science degree, summa cum laude, from the University of Illinois, and a law degree, magna cum laude, from Georgetown. Most importantly, Ed's not a political insider. And if you follow our politics done right, you know that is very important for us. And he's willing to call out any side on its BS. And that is in his bio. So, Ed, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. First of all, before we get into talking about that excellent book that you wrote. I mean, I didn't get a chance to read it yet. I read the table of contents and I said, wow, I like this, because I mean, I just completed my book on how to talk to people with a different philosophy. In my case, how to speak to people on the right. And I'm like, this may also become part of that series. So Ed, tell me a little bit about yourself first.
So as you said in the brief bio that you provided, I've had experience both in government and in the private sector. And as part of that experience, I believe I have a way that we can work together to solve problems in a civil, productive way. And that's what the book is about.
Now, it is interesting because you just released this book. Did you specifically time the book for releasing now, or is just coincidence that you've been thinking about this for some while? Because it seems like you spent a lot of time on it. In scanning through the book, there's a whole lot of stuff that went into it.
Yeah, so the origin of the book is kind of interesting. So when we were in the same point in the process for the 2016 election, I had the privilege of being able to cycle across the U.S. from off the coast of Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine. And as part of that, I was able to observe at the ground level, literally and figuratively, how Americans were reacting to the various candidates in that election. And so that not only helped me predict the outcome of that election to my fellow writers, but also enabled me to see what was really driving those thoughts and feelings that led to those electoral decisions.
Now, interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so I started writing the book. I retired from my last position at the end of 2019 and started writing the book, and the timing actually just worked out very well.
What was that last position?
So in my last position, I was executive chairman of a telecommunications company here in Chicago.
Okay. Interestingly, when you mentioned you cycle across the country, that went dear to my heart. I've done 10 or 12 MS 150s where we've done, 100 miles a day, that kind of, love that kind of a stuff. So we're on the same team there, my friend. Now, interestingly, you went through a whole lot of different time zones, a lot of different types of cities, I imagine, when you went through there. So you actually got a chance to see on the ground level the thinking of people, something that a lot of times the news media, because they're concentrated in cities and more affluent areas, don't get to see. So tell me a little bit about what you saw on the ground.
Yes, I think what I saw, or what I did see, and again, we did go through cities, rural areas, West Coast, mountain states, Midwest, obviously through a good slice of America. I did see that there were polar opposites, but I truly believe those make up, and the research supports it, maybe 10 to 15% on either end of that spectrum. The rest of us, and I'll include myself in there, we really were dissatisfied with certain things and satisfied with certain things, but there was a need for change. And I think, unfortunately, some of the rhetoric in the 2016 election caused a good majority, not maybe a majority, but a good number of people in that moderate group to reject one of the candidates, Hillary Clinton. And it was more about being against one candidate than being for another candidate. And so one of the things that I drew from this experience, not only predicting what the outcome would be, was also that how rhetoric can be used to drive electoral results, and that people were not well equipped to figure out what was truth from falsity, and that was driven by the media. And so part of the book does discuss how we as citizens of the United States and as voters can get to that truth and make better electoral decisions and other decisions in our role as citizens.
Since you mentioned the book right up front, let me go ahead and tell folks the name of the book is We the People, Restoring Civility, Sanity, and Unifying Solutions to U.S. Politics. Yeah, put it up. I'm going to have it in the screen as well, but put it up so people can see it. That is the book. And folks, go out there. I think it launches tomorrow. Is that right?
That is correct. It launches tomorrow.
And that is August 4th that it's launching. If you're listening on podcast tomorrow, that is when it's launching. Those of you that are listening today, you can always go into the blog post, click on it to go ahead and get that book. Anyway, Ed, I want to give some perspective here because during the election, and by the way, I am a Democrat. I'm not an independent like you are. I'm a Democrat. Actually, I'm a left-wing Democrat, but one that likes to engage all sides. I believe in communication. I also believe that we all have to speak for the things that we want. Now, one of the things that, and I'd like to, before we get too deep into your book, I don't know how to resolve this. During the election, I did write an article stating that there's a good chance that Donald Trump was going to win. And at Daily Kos, which is a very progressive site, I got slaughtered for saying that because their statement was, I'm not reading the polls. My statement was, I was in fact reading the polls. That said, I have a problem internally with us constantly giving the impression that Donald Trump won. There's a certain democratic part of me. I'm from Central America, and I looked at America as a true democracy. And what 2000 and 2016 told me was, well, we really are not. Because in as much as we acknowledge that Donald Trump has won, the reality is more people did choose Hillary Clinton. How do we create this discussion about the sentiment of America when the sentiment of America did say that somebody else won?
Yeah, I do discuss this in the book, and it's the effect of the Electoral College. There are two effects that caused the result in 2016. And in fact, this is not the first time that the winner of the electoral vote did not also win the popular vote. But let me focus on what those two are. I think the one that everybody now realizes is that each state has a number of electoral votes, and that is weighted slightly in favor of smaller states because they get a minimum of 3, the 2 for their senators, and then those smaller states just have 1 congressional representative, so they're slightly overweighted in the process. But that's not the main factor. The main factor, which applies to every state but 2, Maine and Nebraska, is that it's winner take all.
Right.
So that if you get 50% plus 1 vote in any state, you win all of those electoral votes. And that has a weighting effect that can, and I discuss this in the book as well, theoretically allow someone to be elected president even if they receive just 23% of the popular vote. And that's the issue. That's the issue.
You came up with a number that I hadn't seen before. You actually found a way that by winning 23% of the popular vote, you could still win an election.
That is correct. And it's based on research from someone else. So I cite that in the book. But that is a reality. And I don't think that's widely known. And then the issue is, I think we focus too much on doing away with the Electoral College. Well, there are a lot of good constitutional reasons, perhaps, why we have that. But we don't need to take that significant of a step. The issue is really caused by the 50% plus 1. And we have 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, that have modified that. States can do that on their own. And I think what we've seen is we need to have a discussion about revising the electoral process, not necessarily the college, to enable the popular vote to more correctly reflect the result.
Now, I think this first part of your book, it's titled Understanding the U.S. Political Process, What You Need to Know That You Weren't Taught in Civics. So what do I need to know that I wasn't taught in physics? And I just want to know that in as much as I'm a naturalized citizen, I did take American civics?
Yeah, here's the basic problem, and I talk about this in the very beginning of the book. I think in American civics education, we focus too much on data and statistics. How many representatives are there? How many senators are there? How does a bill pass? Those things, quite frankly, aren't what we need to know. Any of us, particularly now in the information age, we can look that up in our smartphone in a fraction of a second. What we need to know is, what is the significance of that? What I call the so what. So we have 100 senators. Why do we have that? What does it mean? How does it affect? And that directly ties to what I spoke about in terms of the weighting of the Electoral College. So I think there's been a tendency as well. You may ask, why don't we teach the so what in civics? I think people are afraid, because if you get to the so what, you may trigger some of these positions that are opposing, and people don't want to do that because they're concerned they'll get criticized for that. That's backwards.
Hold on a second. I want you to expand on that, Ed. That is important, what you just said there. Expand on that.
Yes. So here's the issue. We don't teach one of the main things you need to know. One is substantively, what is the so what from all the data and statistics we need to know about our government. But secondly, and more importantly, is how do we have a civil discussion with various viewpoints around politics? And we don't really teach that in the majority of our schools. There's a fear that then you're going to be perceived as taking sides. You may be attacked by the extremes on either side. But what we really all need to know as citizens is how to have a civil, non-divisive discussion to get to real solutions.
I love that. And let me tell you, and I can see that there are certain issues that likely we would not agree on. But the mere fact that you speak about that conversation, which is what I also believe strongly in, we always have to have the conversation to come somewhere to get, because you know what? There's a good chance that you're not going to change some of your beliefs. There's a good chance I won't change some of my beliefs. But guess what? We both have to coexist in the same country. So let's coexist in a manner that we can, right?
Exactly. And I think that that's so important. And I use real examples in the last part of the book to show how we can reframe our discourse in the course of some, some very controversial issues. Abortion, gun rights, all of those things are very controversial. But when we start with our locked in positions and we're not going to budge, and we would just want to yell at each other and call them names, there's no way we can get to a reasonable solution to even begin to fix those issues.
Now, I don't know if you covered this in your book. First of all, let me back up a bit. I like to ask people that have insight like yours, if you've ever heard of the Powell Manifesto or the Powell Memo or any one of these particular documents.
I have not.
Okay. The reason I asked that is because this was a document put out by Lewis Powell. He was appointed by Nixon. He's a Democrat that was appointed by Nixon to the Supreme Court. And he wrote a document stating that as we became a more progressive country, people would start asking too many questions of business. And he wrote a letter talking about having to infiltrate the schools, the churches, the media, and everything, which I think was pretty successful. I think the letter was pretty successful. And we talk a whole lot about this type of news, fake news, etc., which you also mentioned. I don't know if you called it fake news in your book or not, but
I do.
Did you call it fake news in your book, or?
I do. I talk about the fake news issue, which is, I don't find that label very appealing because it's basically been used in the context of, I don't like the news, therefore I'm going to label it as fake.
Right.
And what we really need to do is have a debate on the facts. And so if someone asserts a fact and you disagree with it, your response isn't to attack that person. It's not to call that information fake news. It's to come forward with your facts so that we can have a discussion. And that's not occurring today.
And you know what? It's important because the reason I brought that, the preamble of the Powell Manifesto up is for one specific issue. And I want to see how you would handle this based on what you've written. Let's take a look at the Affordable Care Act. There's this thing called the mandate in the Affordable Care Act. And the purpose of the the Affordable Care Act was to institute responsibility. In other words, you are not going to not have insurance, and when you get sick, because everybody has to be granted it if they request it, be able to buy just at the time that you get sick to use it. So we had an individual mandate. There's an organization known as the Heritage Foundation, a think tank. That was the brainchild of that organization. As soon as it became a part of the Affordable Care Act, suddenly the arguments that they released was against the mandate. How do we handle when we talk about what is fake news or what is hypocritical news or whatever? How do we handle that in discussions when the discussions are taking place not for reality but for position?
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Affordable Care Act. First of all, I will say I have read it, every word.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that puts me in a very small minority of individuals in this country, which is unfortunate because certainly every congressional representative, senator who passed that bill or took a position yes or no on the bill, one would think we the people would expect that they would have read it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, many of them admitted they hadn't even read it, which is unfortunate. So first you have to read it to see what is in there. But
I want to commend you because it's unreadable.
It was very long, and I read it at the time it was passed, so it's been quite a while. But there are some things in there that are surprising would be surprising to most Americans. And what I remember is setting up a process to get information to do a value-added tax. What the heck does that have to do with affordable care? So there's some things in there that I think you need to know. And many times I think we've gotten surprised as Americans because of things that our representatives have passed that we say, where did that come from?
It's just thrown into the bill.
Just thrown into the bill. I don't know the origins of it, but it's interesting. And if people don't read it, they won't have that information. So the first thing is we have to get the facts. And with the affordable care, we need to get the facts in terms of what's in the bill, what are the proposals, what's the reason behind them. And we have to start with that. Specifically on the Affordable Care Act, I think the one thing that I would urge about that is let's start with what we think are common values. Let's not go to our positions yet. What are common values? And I think from that, there are probably some common positions that the vast majority of Americans would agree on, which is coverage for pre-existing conditions. So why do we keep going back to that? And why haven't we passed legislation at least that says that can never be taken away? Disconnect that from, how you get your health care, how it's provided. But what is troubling to me is our proposals that say repeal the Affordable Care Act, but there's nothing that says leave those protections that the vast majority, if not the overwhelming majority of Americans say they would expect and are consistent with our American values. Secondly, I think there are so many issues with healthcare that we really need to get those together and have a factual discussion and get that informed. When we passed the act, I'm not confident that we did that. Was the result perhaps the right result? Maybe. However, if you pass something and you haven't discussed what are we doing, why are we doing it, do the facts support this, how is this going to play out practically? That's why we had all the litigation that happened after the act. If I could take a second, Egberto, and talk about that in the discussions that I believe are going on yet today in Washington, D.C. So the issue about the $600 bonus unemployment compensation. On the one hand, we hear that we need to continue that, and that seems to be helping a vast majority of Americans. Then on the other side, we hear, well, that's paying them more, certain people more than they made when they were working, so we want $200 instead. There's a way to solve that, and I'm just shocked, just absolutely shocked that we haven't gotten to that. If the issue is, and I don't know if the facts are there or not, but I'll assume that they are, that some people are paid more with that supplement than they were with working, what's the one factual piece of information you have to provide if you apply for unemployment
Your
benefits.
your taxes.
What were your wages
Yes.
before you were unemployed? So why don't we solve this really easily? So if anybody's listening that's has influence in this regard, this is really easy to solve. We'll do $600 a week, but no greater than your wages at the time you were unemployed. That's a program that each state could put in despite the challenges of their systems. Why can't we just agree to that?
You know why we can't?
I don't understand.
We can't agree to that because it's not, look, you are rational. And you said the reason I asked what your last job was, I thought your last job would have been something with a think tank that's trying to bring people together or something. You're an executive, okay? The issue, Ed, is that there are many executives who understand that there is profit in chaos. And I think you as an executive know that as well. If there is chaos, there's a lot of finagling that can occur to maximize your profits. If there's order, your profit is probably pretty darn well known. You know, and I think that is one of the reasons I like a bifurcated economy, is that I want the laissez-faire portion of the economy to be that portion of the economy that has a lesser impact on our well-being, our healthcare, the things that really matter to us. And then the laissez-faire part about cell phones and a coffee cup. I want you to go out there as an executive and do whatever kind of deals you can to sell how you want to do. But when it comes to basic health and when it comes to other, my God, we shouldn't have those kinds of things. And I think you based on what you're saying, I think you would even agree with that.
I think what I agree with Egberto specifically is this, that from the perspective of free enterprise and capitalism, most companies, in my experience, and I maybe have been lucky, most of the companies I work for, I think, did it right. And when I was in positions where we had to make public policy decisions, the companies allowed me to propose what was in the best interest of consumers, which I think that you can't go wrong with that. I think the problem is there are some companies, they're not even a majority, they're probably less than 20%, don't play by the rules, and they are not held accountable for that. And I'm hopeful, based on the congressional testimony that happened last week with regard to some of the technology companies, that information and those facts can come forward. Yes, everyone should be allowed to compete under a same common set of rules and principles. But when you start getting into things that violate antitrust law, and I'm an antitrust lawyer from prior background, when you do things where you're trying to eliminate competitors, not serve the consumer, that's where we have to draw the line and say the purpose of all of this is to make things better for all of us. And when we diverge from that and focus so much on putting profits in, and I would say profits that are so excessive, in the hands of top executives, not because they've come up with a better product or service, or because they've delivered it to consumers in a way that delivers a benefit, but because they've squashed the competition, done things to prevent real competition. That's where we need to say no, and we need to be firm and strong about it. And I'm not sure we always have been in this country.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you again is, in reading the table of contents of your book and sort of that, it was clear to me that, and bear with how I'm going to say this, I mean no offense,
Absolutely.
but you are one of the good capitalists, okay? No offense intended in that statement, but what I mean by that is that modal gives you the opportunity of being good or not. You have that choice. And the thing about it is those who make that choice do well. I have a whole list of these companies that I always say these are good companies that are doing their job, but there are so many out there. And when you have a country where most people are in dire straits, and again, I live in a fairly nice neighborhood. I don't see a whole lot of these things. And what concerns me the most is how blind we are to much of the pain that is going through America right now. If you look at the 40 million people that are laid off right now and the pain that they're going to have to go through over the next few weeks, you don't even see it on TV, Ed.
No, and it is so frustrating. I mean, there are examples that I've seen by some news organizations that cover this. And if I can say names, ProPublica, NPR, I think they do a very good job. And it's really unfortunate. And what's most unfortunate is that our elected officials seem to ignore that suffering of the people that they represent. I mean, we have that suffering in this country in spades right now. It's so unfortunate and unnecessary.
Right.
So we have the effects of the coronavirus, and we basically make statements like, oh, we only have cases because we test. That's absolutely false. So if I could spend a second on that, the number of tests and the number of cases are largely irrelevant. The number that we should all be looking at is the positivity rate. Our scientists have told us that if the positivity rate, that is those that test positive, that percentage over the number of people tested is above 5%, we have a problem.
Yes.
It's not who is doing the most tests. That's need to do that, the higher your positivity rate is. But the thing you should focus on is that positivity rate. And if it's above 5%, if it's above 10% or above 20%, as it has been in some states
in Texas, yes,
that says one thing. We may not like what it says, but the data doesn't lie. It says the coronavirus is spreading. And if it is spreading, we must take certain measures to protect people from the spread. But we focused on this false thing about the numbers. And I wish the media as well would focus on that positivity rate. When you do those comparisons and you look at it to other countries across the globe, you can see, yes, we have a problem and it's spreading. And by the way, it's not a competition to see who can do the most tests or any of that. The enemy isn't each other. The enemy isn't other countries. The enemy is the virus. So what do we need to do to stop this virus? And the only way you can do that is get the facts and make sure they're relevant and act on those facts. And that's where we're just missing it.
Ed, Wynn, I could speak to you for a whole hour or two, but we only have a segment. So what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't ask you? And rest assured that all the information about your book and so forth will be in a blog with this segment isolated from the whole show as well. So I'll let you have that.
Egberto, I think we had a very good discussion. The only thing that I would wanted you to ask me about, and I know you've discussed it on other podcasts, is about voting. And that is so important that we have that voting. And if I could spend just a second on that. You know, we've got this debate right now about in-person voting and mail-in voting. And I'd like to make 3 points about that if I could. First, absentee voting is mail-in voting. How do you think it gets to the polling place? Is there a Brinks truck that arrives at your door and delivers it personally? No, it goes through the mail. So we just need to say that's mail-in voting. The second point is that we have done mail-in voting in a number of states, and there are no issues with that in terms of significantly increasing fraud. We've done it, and we've done it successfully. The third point is I think we can solve this issue. So if I look at the Wisconsin primary that occurred earlier this year, Milwaukee typically has 180 polling places. Do you know how many they had open for that primary?
I think
5.
Yes, ridiculous.
5. So when you're having a pandemic and you want to reduce exposure, would you have fewer polling places or more?
More, so you have spread it out, yeah.
Here's my proposal. I think it's too late to maybe get the rest of the states to have proper mail-in voting. Should have worried about that back when we knew there was Russian interference in the election, but we didn't. But here's the proposal. Why don't we have in-person voting required for everyone unless, the medical reasons, some reason why you can't get to the polls, not absentee voting, you need to get to your poll. But rather than to make sure it's safe for everyone, Let's expand the number of polling places. In Milwaukee, let's go from 180 to 360 so people can safely vote. Let's do early voting. If you believe in the integrity, that the only way we can ensure the integrity of the election is in-person voting, and I'm not a believer in that, but let's say that's the case. Let's have more polling places so people can do it safely and we can get valid election results, and that way people can feel safe when they go to the polls. So that's the one question I was thinking you might ask, and that's my response to it.
Interestingly, I think you turned it into 3 questions, Ed. Ed Wynn, author of We the People, Restoring Civility, Sanity, and Unifying Solutions to U.S. Politics. Ed, I really enjoyed having you on Politics Done Right. I really enjoy your insight. You are a communicator, and I hope to have you on again sometime.
Great. Thank you very much, Egberto, and I very much enjoyed our discussion today.
Thank you. Anyway, folks, I hope that you guys enjoyed that. The voter fraud is a myth is correct. Before I get into answering the questions, I'm going to be real quick. This is the time of the show where I ask you guys to support the program. Please remember, this is Politics Done Right, a program that needs your support. If you want to support us, please remember, Patreon is our preferred method of support. Patreon, you can go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, and that way you can have all different levels of subscriptions. They start very inexpensively. Alternatively, you can support us via PayPal as well. That is politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. If you are on YouTube right now listening to us and you're so kind, if you decide to, you can give us a super chat. The super chat is another way to support what we're doing here, trying to provide information, trying to enlighten people as well. Facebook recently has allowed us to start taking memberships on Facebook as well. We have a meager start. Please go ahead and join us if you can. That is politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. That is politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. And of course, you can visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store. politicsdoneright.com/store. What can you get at our store? You can get our cups that have Politics Done Right. It also has the squad. It also has all kinds of different cups that we have. Likewise, we have my first book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's an excellent book. You can get it right there at the store, or you can get it at Amazon.com, wherever you choose. As you know, I've had my weight problems in the past. Lose weight and be fit now is my solution, which would be your solution because it is done your way. And all of this is to maintain this show. The products we sell, the T-shirts we sell, the what is it called? Bumper stickers, all of that we do, again, to keep this show going. So I ask you to consider going to politicsdoneright.com/store to support us, or politicsdoneright.com/Patreon to support or become members of the program. We have a web page where we give you thanks. Depending on the level you have, you can even get your own web page at our spot, at our website, etc., etc. Check it out. You get all kind of levels, all kinds of support. Thank you so kindly for being here. Anyhow, let me go real quickly, and I'm going to start from the bottom up. Or actually, I need to salute all my people here, first of all. Welcome aboard, Mac Radnin. Welcome aboard, AVQ. Dimitri Ogil. Bienvenido, hermano. Aquarian Radio. Love that name. Aquarian Radio. Welcome, Aquarian Radio. Bruce Pollard reminded me that we must vote. We must vote. That is how we get out of this quandary that we're in right now. Welcome aboard as well, Sir Wesley 08. Thank you for showing up. We also have, scrolling, Lee Grant. Lee Grant, my favorite, one of my favorite conservatives. Troy Astro, welcome aboard. And if I miss you, please just send me another line. I'll be more than happy to call you out. Who else am I missing? I saw some others here that I missed. Anyhow, Aquarius says America. Sorry. Yeah, you must have seen that New York Times video. It was depressing to watch that. Essential workers should be making more than $15 an hour, including healthcare and hazard pay. I think you noticed what I said about that $600. It shouldn't only go to the people that are staying home. But the essential workers should get that $600 and health care. You are correct, my dear friend, Mr. Rudnan. Let's see. Are you familiar with the active measures agenda? We just had a show with James Tolley. This is time to unite. The active measures agenda, I guess that's something I have to research Aquarian Radio because I don't know. If you want to give me a short line or a link underneath here, I would be grateful to you. Trump and the GOP play divide and conquer. Yes, they do. Aquarian Radio says, cap on personal wealth. Wealthy have become wealthy based on our labor. This is a slave system. We need a living wage, housing, food, clothes, shelter, education, communication, transportation. Yeah, we work as a society, doing all these things. You are, in fact, correct, my dear Aquarian. Now, again, I don't want people to sit back and hear what you just have to say and hear free for all. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a society which does exactly what that means, society. And a society means we all work. There are no freeloaders here. But at the same time, the greedy, we can't allow the greedy to take advantage of the freeloaders. Okay, Michael Rudnan said, Egberto, you're describing corporate socialism, bailouts for corporations, below living wages for people with government assistance to cover the lesser. Rudnan, exactly. Because that is an ingenious way of giving away the people's money, right? You're giving away their labor, and then you're using government money, the sum total of all of us, to pay what you weren't able to pay them through the corporation. Good observation. And you know who else talks about that? Richard, what's his name? The economist, Richard Wolff, speaks about that a lot. Check out Capitalism Hits the Fan. Great piece that he did a few years ago. Still prescient right now. Sarah Wester says you don't just declare what your margin of error is for a poll, it's calculated. Exactly. And you know, there are people who know stats very well who knows how to do that. I did stats. I made a B in the class, and I was lucky to make a B in the class because at the time it was I think it was a pretty darn difficult class. Lee Grant says, if you want to be non-divisive, refrain from labeling a significant part of the citizen cultist sycophants. You know, we try, Lee. I mean, you're right, though. You're right. It's hard to tell somebody you're a sycophant and then you want to go ahead and bring them into the fold. I can't argue with you on that one, Lee Grant. I try. I really try hard. But I think along with me, Lee, you are not a sycophant. I know you're not. But you know it's hard when we're just human, Lee. We're just human. Troy Astro, replying to Michael Rudnan. I'll leave that for the reply. Let me go. It seems like I just got. How TF can you work if jobs are closed down? Whoa. How? Let me tell you, Kathy Lynn. Earlier, remember what I mentioned was there are people, the essential workers, Kathy. They're out there working. And what I'm saying is those essential workers, that $600 for the people that are going to stay home, should also go to those essential workers. Plus, we should give those ensure that those essential workers get all the health care they need. What I mean is the following. The way economic system works is as follows. We have invention, we have creation, we have manufacture, we have the ones who feed us. The ones we must have are the ones who feed us. We have to have the ones who serve the material that feeds us, and the people who are going to repair where we live, etc. Those are fundamental. Why do we want to keep the workforce as small as possible? Because if we keep the workforce as small as possible, we reduce the infection rates. We want to do that, and once the infection rates are reduced into a manageable fashion, then we can all go back to work. But the pact that we should make with government is shut everything down, don't allow those that can't work to die, and don't allow those who have to work to be feeling as they are slaves by putting their lives at risk. So it's a balancing act that we're doing, understanding that we can't, if you're stating your own words, we can't TF not all not work. But we can minimize the amount of people working such that we reduce the transmission rates of infection. And when we have that control, when we have that mitigated, then everybody can slowly go back into work where we can then selectively knock out any breakouts that we have. That's what it's all about. It's not just about staying home for the sake of staying home, Kathy Lynn. There is a science behind what we're saying. There's a science behind it. And because Europe European countries followed the science. They're doing just fine. And for people who say, oh, there's a surge in Europe, you're correct. But it's a manageable surge because of the homework they did for 2 months, for 8 weeks to get it under control. New York is under control because for 8 weeks they locked down hard. And by locking down hard, they reduced the infection flare-ups. And now they can slowly open up, and whenever they find flares, they can knock those out before it becomes totally community-based. I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. I thank you so kindly for being here with us. Please share us. Please let other people know about us. We will continue to do the work. Please support us by subscribing to us, by shopping at our store. That is how we are going to make this change. Thank you so kindly for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.